Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu
Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Saraswata Sadasya Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswata Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Om Vishwadhar Javadi Maharaj ki
Jai.
Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki
Jai.
Shri Jagannath Javadi Maharaj ki
Jai.
Prabhu Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki
Jai.
Rama Sastra Haridas Thakur ki
Jai.
Sarva Swami ki
Jai.
Mayapur Navade Dham ki
Jai.
Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki
Jai.
Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai ki
Jai.
Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani ki
Jai.
Ananta Kadi Vaishnava Vrinda ki
Jai.
Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki
Jai.
Nitai Gaur Sitana Premanande
Hari Bol.
All Krishna Samadi
Hare Krishna.
All Krishna Samadi
Hare Krishna.
All Krishna Samadi
Hare Krishna.
All Krishna Samadi
Hari Bol.
Namaste Narasimhaya
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlada Radhaine Prahlada Radhaine Hiranyakashipu Vasha Hiranyakashipu Srilada Kanakalaye Srilada Kanakalaye Kana Singha Paratana Singha Hridaye Narasimha. Narasimha Hridaye Narasimha. Narasimha Mani Sharanam Prapade. Narasimha Mani Sharanam Prapade. Bhavakara Kamanavare Nandha Madhudalinga Talita Hiranagasipu Pranalinga Keshavamita Hari Rupa Jaya Jagarisha Hare Jaya Jagarisha Hare Jaya Jagatisha Hare.
Hare Krishna, devotees. Welcome to the Sunday program. All the devotees that have joined us on both YouTube and Zoom on this rainy winter day. We wish you a happy new year. It's our first program, Sunday program of 2021. We hope your 2021 has gotten off to a good Krishna conscious start. Before we continue with our Bhagavad Gita study, we want to do a quick darshan of the deities. I'm going to take you around from Srila Prabhupada through, and then we'll transition to our Bhagavad Gita class. His Divine Loving Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Parama Karuna Shishi Gaur Nitai Ki. Shrimati Tulsi Maharani ki. So sometimes this happens. I zoom out, or I zoom in, and then it doesn't let me zoom out. So forgive me here. We're going to take darshan of each of the deities. Shri Baladeva ki. Jai. Shrimati Subhadra Maharani ki. Shri Jagannatha Swami ki. And their most beautiful lordships, Shri Shri Radha Sharad Bihari. We'll start at the lotus feet. Start at Chaudhary Radha Krishna. Meditation on the lotus feet. Krishna's threefold bending form. And the lotus faces. So again, thank you for being with us. At this point, we will transition to our Srimad Bhagavad Gita study. It'll just be a very brief, quick interruption. Hare Krishna. We'll start off by singing Jaya Radha Madhava. Today, His Grace Vishnu Gira Prabhu, he is in Puerto Rico. He goes down this time every year. Usually they have Rath Yatra there, but this year they don't have Rath Yatra because of COVID, but he's still visiting some of his devotee friends that are there. So we miss him. We'll be filling in today and continuing our study of the Bhagavad Gita. Start off by chanting Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashotatara Shri Mad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashotatara Shri Mad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki ISKCON Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Skoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. So, we are going to continue our study of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The last couple of weeks, we have been studying about the lead up to the Bhagavad Gita. And we are almost at the point where Lord Krishna begins to instruct Arjuna. But we're not quite there yet. We're going to go through the last points of that conversation or Arjuna's arguments and how he put them forth before the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. We're going to discuss them today. Before we begin, let us first chant the Mangalacharam found in the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita. You'll find this if you have it at home. It's on page, if you have this particular copy of the Bhagavad Gita, you'll find it on page number 1. Om Agena Timbarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Swapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sanjeevam Sarvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishnabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakopa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya Evacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So last week when we left off, Vishnu Gira Prabhu was explaining so very nicely about the different arguments that Arjuna had set forth of why this battle would not be a very good thing. Would not be good for him, nor would it be good for society. We'll go over those very quickly, and then we'll move ourselves to today's topic of conversation. So Arjuna saw that there was, when he instructed Lord Krishna as Parthasharthi, the driver of the chariot, to please pull my chariot between both armies so I could see who all the Kurus that have been assembled here. Actually, Krishna said all the Kurus that are assembled here, meaning that you're all one family. And there Arjuna could then see everybody who was assembled. He saw his cousins, family members, but most importantly, he saw before him his beloved his beloved grandfather, Bhishma, and his beloved teacher, Dronacharya. So the arguments that Arjuna began to mention before Krishna, put forth before Krishna, of why perhaps we shouldn't be fighting this battle, was born out of compassion. Arjuna started having compassion for those that he was about to kill. He looked upon You can only imagine Arjuna looking across the battlefield and seeing Grandfather Bhishma. Grandfather Bhishma, after his father had died, Pandu, Arjuna, he was the caretaker. He was the one that raised him. But when we go a little bit even deeper into that, when we look at Grandfather Bhishma's story, we can imagine the same pain that Arjuna was feeling was exactly the pain and circumstance that Bhishma was trying to prevent many, many, many years before. Let us retrace the history. Grandfather Bhishma, who wasn't grandfather at the time, he was the son of Shantanu. He was the emperor of Hastinapur at the time. Now, Shantanu was married at one point to Ganga, the goddess Ganga, personification of the river. Grandfather Bhishma, there's a whole backstory to that as well. But he was born half demigod, half emperor. He had both royal blood, being born from Maharaj Shantanu, and blood of the demigods. He was, by all means, one of the most qualified individuals on the face of the earth to rule both spiritually as well as politically. He was trained by his father, and before that he had been trained and schooled in the heavenly planets. He had been given all the celestial arts that he learned, the military science, and so forth. One day, his father, after Ganga had left and returned back to the heavenly kingdom, his father was wifeless. One day, he came across a beautiful woman that really captivated his heart. Her name was Satyavati. And Satyavati, she was the daughter of a fisherman's. She was the daughter of a fisherman. And he just, sometimes we see love at first sight. This was love at first sight. He followed her, and he made a proposal to her that, I want you to be my queen. She took him to her father, the fisherman, and her father said, I can agree to this arrangement, but there's a couple conditions that we have to set forth in order for this to happen. Maharaj Shantanu said, please, whatever conditions it is, I would like this woman to be my wife. He said, well, I want my grandson, the child you bear between my daughter and you, to be the heir to the kingdom. He will become the future king. That is my condition. Right away, Maharaj Shantanu thought about his son. It wasn't Bhishma at the time, Devavrata. And he thought, well, how could that possibly be? He is the most qualified. He is born of both royalty and demigod. How could we possibly, how could I possibly agree to such terms? So he returned home, but days after this encounter with Satyavati and the fisherman, Maharaj Shantanu wasn't the same. He was morose. His closest companion, his own son, understood that something was wrong with his father, but his father couldn't reveal his mind. So Bhishma went to the charioteer and asked him, where did my father go the other day where he became, that has changed him? He hasn't been the same since he's come back. This isn't good, and I want to get to the bottom of this. So he traveled, to the place, the dwelling of the fishermen and Satyavati. And as soon as he saw her, he realized that this was the cause of his father's condition. But he didn't know why. Beautiful woman, his father must be attracted to her. He must want to make her his queen. So upon talking to the fisherman, Bhishma could understand that, you know what? If you want your daughter's son to be heir to the kingdom, and it will take away my father's distress, I will sign a contract to that right now. I will renounce the throne, and you should not worry. Allow my father to be happy, allow your daughter to be happy. And the fisherman said, you were very noble, you were very kind. But there's only one condition. You are saying this now, but eventually you will marry. And your wife, she may not feel the same way. And therefore she will try to manipulate situations and give my daughter a lot of problems. My grandson, you're agreeing to be king, she will try to sabotage that. These are family politics. Even in the littlest way, we see this manifest now. My child's better than your child. I want my child to be, the main part in the play over her child. We see it manifest. This is in a big way. We see it manifest in many small ways in everyday life. So what to do? Bhishma wasn't married at the time. He couldn't predict what his future wife, how her reaction would be to that. Understandably, there could be some feelings of jealousy. So on the spot, he proposed, not only will I renounce the throne, but for the sake of peace in the future, in my family lineage, I will take a vow of celibacy, never marry and never procreate. For a warrior, for somebody born in royalty, somebody trained to the degree that Bhishma was being trained for, to take over as the emperor. This was an awful curse, as Devati Deva Prabhu has just posted. And then from the heavens, flowers started showering down from the demigods. And Bhishma. But the purpose he did that for was so the same incident that is taking place on the battlefield wouldn't have taken place. Everything that he put into that decision was so that there would be no backstabbing. There would be no decision of who is in charge, who is supposed to be taking the throne. There wouldn't be this fratricidal war. He was supposed to take care of all that. All the best intentions. Now, life is like that sometimes. We make all the best, we try to make our best decision. Sometimes we even make personal sacrifices. But it doesn't always come out the way we intended it to. Those of us that are parents, we know this very easily as a fact. We put so much into our children's education, their upbringing. Sometimes we undergo debt. We work countless hours. We make all these different various arrangements. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes the children have other plans. They leave and do something different than what we intended. All the best intentions, sometimes our best intentions despite all our efforts that we put in, all our personal sacrifices, they don't work out. So when Arjuna, and this will be apparent in the verse that we read tonight, Srila Prabhupada talks about the same principle. But you can only imagine the connection when Arjuna, who knows the story of Grandfather Bhishma, he looks across the battlefield and he sees him standing there. All that he was willing to sacrifice so this didn't happen. And now Arjuna is thinking, how is it that I can prevent this? When we understand the Gita in this way, the build-up to the Gita, it gives a certain feeling. And this feeling can help us understand the intensity that was going on at the moment, and also the extreme compassion that Krishna was speaking to Arjuna with. I remember when I first got the Bhagavad Gita, I was told, just skip over the first chapter, because the real stuff begins in the second chapter. And in many ways, that can be understood, because Krishna begins to speak in the second chapter. And Krishna begins speaking philosophy in the second chapter. That is all true. But in understanding the feeling, the desperation, the sadness, the complete loss of understanding, the bewilderment that Arjuna was in, to understand this buildup that we've been studying over the last several weeks, really helps us understand this moment that we are all coming to. So, in addition to the compassion that Arjuna was feeling, he also knew that enjoyment he would not be able to fulfill. In one hand, he would be victorious in battle. And if he was victorious in battle, he would win a kingdom. Or if he lost in battle, later on in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells him, he says, those who die in battle, they go to the heavenly kingdoms. So either way, there is no loss. Either you die in battle, you go to the heavens and enjoy there, or you win the battle and you inherit the kingdom. It's a win-win situation for a warrior. But Arjuna saw it from a different perspective. He says, how can I enjoy if the people that mean so much to me are on the other side? Everything that I would enjoy would be tainted with their blood. In addition to that, so let's take a look at that for a second. Sometimes we hear this term, dirty money. You know, I earned a lot of money, I have a lot of nice things, but I got it in kind of a sleazy way. You know, I manipulated a situation, you know, maybe I'm dealings in the black market or illegal dealings, or maybe I scammed somebody, but I have a lot of money, so now I can enjoy. Well, it's kind of tainted with a level of dishonesty that prevents you from wanting to enjoy. You have it, but every time you look at it, you're going to be reminded, like, look at all the illegal means that I did in order to get me here. That would prevent a person from wanting to enjoy the objects that they purchased by illegal means. So in the same way, Arjuna was saying, I don't want to enjoy if it means at the expense of the blood of my relatives. And he took it a little bit further, and he said the destruction of the family that will come from me engaging in battle. All these warriors on both my side and the other side, they all have families. A lot of them had their own little kingdoms and their citizens that they oversaw. Now they would be without fathers and leaders. And without that in society, A fatherless society leaves the women unprotected. This is Arjuna's argument. And without those that understand the importance of performing sacrifice, those that understand the importance of spiritual pursuits in life, and how we have to offer what we have in the element of sacrifice, all the offerings will become lost. Society will spiral into degradation. When that happens, all the children will have no future. Varna Shankara. Unwanted population will come. So men will exploit women. Women will not be under the protection of men, but will be exploited by them. Unwanted children will come and society will be degraded. And Arjuna is saying all this because we're trying to get a kingdom. It's not worth it. He also understood that there's a lot of sinful reactions that would come about that. Why would I want to engage in, knowing that I would incur sin if he says, sin will come apart, will be prevalent in society. But imagine the person who creates the situation where this happened. It would fall on their head. And Arjuna is saying, I don't want this to be on my head. I don't want people to come back and say, all this happened because of Arjuna's decision. Just a mundane example. Sometimes these are mundane examples. They're just there to just give us relevancy to it. I have a boss, and every year we have a holiday party at our job. And it's nothing too crazy. It's more of a family gathering. But over the years, people have become less traditional. It used to be a thing where, something people would be very proud about, and they bring their families. But over the years, cultures change. New employees come. They're really not interested in this stuff, and it kind of lost its intrigue. It was no longer what it once was, and it was about to fall apart. And my boss, who's kind of an old-time traditionalist, was like, no, we have to keep it going because it's not going to fall apart under my watch. I don't want them to look back and say, under my watch, this thing fell apart. So Arjuna is also saying, I'm not going to have this society fall apart under my decision, under my watch. So he's presenting all these arguments to Lord Krishna as a way out. Saying, we don't need to fight. Now, this is based on logic. It's also based on Shastra. But despite the fact that it's based on logic and Shastra, Arjuna is still not satisfied. He's still at a place of confusion. He tells Krishna in the second chapter, 5th verse. We'll read a couple of these, and then we'll stop at the verse for today. He says, it would be better to live in this world begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls, who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are my superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoyed will be tainted with blood. Kshatriyas don't beg, they rule. But Arjuna was so bewildered that he was willing to escape his situation and enter into the life of a beggar, despite, as we'll find out later in the Gita, this was against his nature, his dharma. Then Arjuna says, nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. They are standing before us on the battlefield. Now, today's verse is when Arjuna takes to a turning point in his life. And And it's a turning point that we all, at some point, will eventually come to if we haven't already come to. It may not be as extreme as Arjuna, but we can come to this point when we actually become perplexed, we become bewildered, and we realize that there is no other solution than to surrender to God. I'm going to put it up on the screen so we can chant it and read it. This is the second chapter, 7th verse. Karpanya doso fatasva bhavaha prachami tvam dharma samuda chetaha yatstraya shayam nishchitam buhitan me shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapanam. Would anybody like to chant this verse? If not, that's okay.
Karpanya dosha pahata svabhava.
The translation.
Translation, I'm sorry.
Oh, we were chanting.
Arjuna says to
Haribol,
Krishna,
Prabhu, I wanted to
now I am
chant.
confused about my duty, and I've lost all composure because of miserly weakness.
What's happening?
This
Mataji?
condition, I'm asking you
I
to tell
don't
me
know.
for
We want to
certain
chant,
what
but
is
we
best
can't
for me.
hear us.
I start.
Now I am your disciple, and a soul
Anyway, it's
surrendered
okay.
to you. Please instruct me. Now,
It's okay.
one of the great acharyas that we have in our line, Srila Baladeva
He said
Vijabhushana,
chant, that's why I started.
he speaks to the mood of Lord Krishna receiving this plea from Arjuna. He says, speaking as Krishna, you know Shastra. Why didn't you use your own logic and reasoning? So Arjuna, he put forth many arguments, but amidst all the arguments, he was still bewildered. So Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, by nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. In every step, there is perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give one proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. All Vedic literatures advise us to approach a bona fide spiritual master to get free from the perplexities of life, which happen without our desire. They are like a forest fire that somehow blazes without being set by anyone. Similarly, the world situation is such that perplexities of life automatically appear without our wanting such confusion. No one wants fire, and yet it takes place, and we become perplexed. The Vedic wisdom therefore advises that in order to solve the perplexities of life and to understand the science of the solution, one must approach a spiritual master who is in disciplic succession. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not therefore remain in material perplexities, but should approach a spiritual master. This is the purport of this verse. So we're speaking about Grandfather Bhishma and all of the arrangements he tried to make and personal self-sacrifices he tried to have, that he endured in order to have his family lineage be free from envy and fighting. But it didn't happen. And this is what Srila Prabhupada is saying in the purport, is that life is full of perplexities. No one works for perplexities. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go out and create problems. The nature of people is to want to be happy, to want to enjoy. No one tries to be unhappy. No one tries to create problems. Everybody's trying to think of their own happiness. But despite trying to always be happy and always acting in a way which we think will bring about our happiness, still problems come. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example. Just like a forest fire, no one sets it ablaze, but yet it starts and creates so much problems. How true is this in our own lives? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 7th chapter, that 4 types of pious people eventually approach me and surrender to me. One of those people are those that are in a distressed condition. They're perplexed. Another is that one is inquisitive. Another's, they want to know more. Why do they want to know more? Because life is so perplexing. There has to be something more than just this, completes this cycle of trying to enjoy, becoming let down, trying something new, finding out that that's going to be let down. Srila Prabhupada, he compared this to enjoying in material life is like chewing the chewed. Every taste, every enjoyment that we have has actually already been enjoyed by somebody else. And they've realized that it's become stale. They spit it out. And then we try to enjoy it, thinking, I will be able to derive satisfaction from it. And then we get tired of it and we spit it out. And this continuous cycle of doing this leaves one into a place where wondering, is there something higher? What is life all about? Srila Prabhupada continues in the purport. Who is the man in material perplexities? It is he who does not understand the problems of life. In the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 3.8.10, the perplexed man is described as follows. Yova etad aksharam gargya viditi vashamshal lokat pratiti sha kripana. He is a miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as a human, and thus quits this world like cats and dogs without understanding the science of self-realization. This human form of life is the most valuable asset for the living entity, who can utilize it for solving problems of life. Therefore, one who does not utilize this opportunity properly is a miser. On the other hand, there is the Brahmana, or he who is intelligent enough to utilize the body to solve all the problems of life. Yad etad aksharam gargi vidvam shal vamshmal lokat pratiti so brahmana. So, in this paragraph, unless one uses the qualities of human life, which is to inquire about the absolute truth, to understand that there's a difference between the self and the material world around it, we will waste a valuable opportunity. We can continue going in that cycle, as we said, chewing the chewed, or we can break out of that cycle. Only in the human form of life is this possible. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada says, otherwise we quit this world just like cats and dogs. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. We may do it in a more polished way. We may do it in a more glamorous way. But the activity itself at its base level is the same. Human life is meant for self-realization. The purport continues. The Kripanas, or miserly persons, waste their time being overly affectionate for family, society, country, etc., in the material conception of life. One is often attached to family life, namely wife, children, and other members, on the basis of skin disease. The Kripana thinks that he is able to protect his family members from death. Or the Kripana thinks that his family or society can save him from the verge of death. Such family attachment can be found even in the lower animals who take care of children also, who take care of their children also. Being intelligent, Arjuna could understand that his affection for his family members and his wish to protect them from death were the cause of his perplexities. Although he could understand that his duty to fight was awaiting him, still, on the account of miserly weakness, he could not discharge the duties. He was therefore asking Lord Krishna, the Supreme Spiritual Master, to make a definitive solution. He offers himself to Krishna as a disciple. He wants to stop friendly talks. Talks between the master and the disciple are serious. And now Arjuna wants to talk very seriously before a recognized spiritual master. Krishna is therefore the original spiritual master of the science of Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna is the first disciple for understanding the Bhagavad Gita. So this word Kripana means a person that is, small-minded. They miss the opportunity. They're overly attached to something that is not really significant, especially when they have a lot more to gain. I was looking up this word miserly, and an example it gave is like a person who acts very frugally, but actually has a lot of money and you wouldn't actually know about it. They have a lot more to offer than what they actually show or actually do. And a person who engages his life simply for attachment to family, attachment to society, attachment to country, thinking that these things will actually bring them happiness or protect them and give them security. These people will ultimately be let down. Through transcendental knowledge, we can understand this. Through giving this knowledge to others, we can understand this. If not, it takes a lot of failures and frustration for a person to come to this platform. But once they come to this platform, they then begin to surrender to God. So, the example that's given in the Vedas is that there are two birds sitting in a tree. One of those birds represents the jiva, the soul, us, you and me. And the other bird represents Krishna in the form of the supersoul. When the living entity enters into this world, he does so due to misuse of his free will. The misuse of the free will to want to enjoy separately from Krishna awards the soul a material body in a material world with a material situation. And everybody's situation is different. And we acquire actions which develop into karma, which lead to our future future reactions, which bring us future bodies, future situations and circumstances. Despite our desire to want to leave Krishna, Krishna accompanies the living entity into the material world in a most compassionate act. He manifests himself as the Paramatma, the super soul that resides within the soul of each living entity. And not just of humans, animals, plants, everything that has life. Wherever there's a soul, there's a super soul. And the purpose of that super soul is to witness and accompany the individual soul in all its dealings and activities, all its desires. The analogy is of two birds. And the one bird is hopping from tree to tree, enjoying the fruits of that tree. Sometimes the fruits are bitter, sometimes the fruits are sweet. But what happens is you're just going from tree to tree, tree to tree. Sooner or later, that bird, he realizes, I'm just doing the same activity over and over again and getting the same result. But that result is not bringing me any ultimate level of satisfaction. And when that bird that represents us turns to the other bird, that other bird then understands that, okay, you're ready to understand the real purpose of life. You're ready to get out of the shackles of this material world. The shackles are material desires which create attachments. And it's all centered around our body. That body is temporary, and it's also an illusion that it's really not us. It's made out of material matter, it's made out of material energy. Krishna will explain later in the Bhagavad Gita that there are two energies, the spiritual energy and the material energy. The body is made out of the material energy. It has no endurance. It has no life to itself. The only life that we witness is because the soul is within the material body. Therefore, it appears as if the material body has life. But you take the spirit soul out of the body, then the body is dead matter. So when we are ready, when that bird turns to the super soul bird, Krishna then begins to make all types of arrangements for us to come back to him. He sends to us a spiritual master who is the external representation of that super soul to guide us in the path of devotional service, which will ultimately lead us back to our eternal home, back to Godhead. And guide us along the way of all the pitfalls that we could fall back into, to the various illusions that the world presents to us. Without the spiritual master, as Srila Prabhupada says in this purport, we will remain in perplexity. The gifts of the Guru, the gifts of the pure devotee, will allow us to see life in the real way. Without it, we will be leaving ourselves up to our own imperfect mind, body, and senses. Under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, we will be under the protection of Krishna's pure devotee. And he will be able to illuminate the path for which we can't see ourselves, from which our eyes are covered. Om Agyanata Barandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. We were born in the darkness of ignorance. Does anybody have any doubt about that? Being born in the darkness of ignorance? Probably not. But by the mercy of the spiritual master, our eyes have been opened with the torchlight of knowledge, transcendental knowledge, because we can now see that there's a difference between the self and the body. And as we go deeper, we can understand that that self actually has a supreme master, the supreme self, who is a person, Lord Sri Krishna. So we're going to go into another. We have two more verses to cover tonight before we end and take questions. So Arjuna then, he makes this act of surrender to Krishna, which is the act that every transcendentalist eventually gets to the point with being frustrated with the material world, and understanding that one cannot solve one's own problems. The example that is given is, if my hands are tied with rope, I can't untie my hands. Even though I want to get out of the material, even though I want to get untied, I can't untie myself unless I have somebody come and untie it, who knows how to untie it. Because that which I want to untie is not usable, it's bound. So we need a spiritual master to untie us from the material attachments of this world and to impart to us the confidential secrets that are only imparted to the self-realized souls. Arjuna continues. He's still talking to Krishna. He says, I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying up my senses, and I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. So win or lose, he says, I will not be happy. If I win and I get a kingdom on earth, I'm going to be unhappy. If I get a heavenly king, if I go to the heavenly kingdom, if I lose and go to and die on the battlefield, I still won't be happy. The next verse is, Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of the enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight. And he fell silent. Sanjaya intervenes here. And who is Sanjaya speaking to? Dhritarashtra.
Dhritarashtra.
And Dhritarashtra, he was sitting back in the kingdom, in the palace in Hastinapur, wondering what is happening. And we found out earlier, a couple of weeks ago, all these auspicious signs that made Dhritarashtra feel so uncomfortable that it looked like it was a shoo-in, that the Pandavas were going to win, the Kauravas were going to lose. And the way that Sanjaya was projecting it out was that your sons, Dhritarashtra, have no chance. Everything is stacked against them. But there was one thing that Dhritarashtra held on to, that they were fighting in Kurukshetra, into a holy place. There are many, very famous, this place. Dharmakshetra, Kurukshetra. It was known as a place of Dharma. He was thinking maybe the influence of Dharma would act actually in favor of my sons. Not because they were auspicious, but because the piety of the Pandavas would actually get them to see that all this bloodshed that's going to be happening could be avoided, and then they will actually retreat and compromise. So upon hearing Arjuna falling apart at Krishna's feet, this brought Dhritarashtra great joy. Hope all of a sudden arose within his heart. And the last verse we'll talk about tonight, text 10. O descendant of Bharata, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. Now, why would Krishna be smiling here? Arjuna just surrendered to him. Arjuna is grief-stricken. But Krishna, he cracks a smile. Anybody would like to take an understanding of why Krishna may be smiling here?
Prabhu, this is Vatsala, Mataji. I think Krishna knows about the consequences, what's going to happen.
I can't hear you.
I unmuted myself.
Hare Krishna, Mother Vatsala.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
For some reason I can't hear.
He has some problem, audio problem.
Yeah, you have audio problem, Prabhu.
Yeah, he's not able to hear anything.
Audio problem, Prabhu.
Yeah, it's on my side. I apologize. Pete, you may have been...
Yeah, that's what.
Yes, because Sudevi Mataji wanted to chant. And
Yeah.
No, I started chanting also.
That was my fault on this side. I had
it's
the...
okay.
my sound off. And
Okay.
I'm sorry, devotees. I just thought everybody was falling asleep.
No.
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 Means I started chanting and then Sudevi Mataji was telling and no
Yeah.
response from you.
We are listening keenly.
Yeah.
Oh, so I apologize. I really do apologize. But Krishna's smiling here. Let's finish
Yes.
with this. Why do you think Krishna is smiling?
Can I tell you?
Yes, please.
Prabhu, this is, I think Krishna knows the whole thing. He already arranged everything, what's going to happen. But he's Atmarama, he doesn't feel pain or pleasure. And he knows what's going to happen in the battlefield, how Arjuna is going to be surrendering to him. So, Krishna is always smiling. I mean, that's his nature. Maybe in a Vishnu form, it is a different concept we get. But Krishna knows the consequences of this battle. Who is going to be the winner? And Arjuna will be his disciple eventually. And he's going through the motions of, being confused. And he was realizing that he's going to be hurting his relatives. He's going to be, killing all his relatives, all the friends in the battle. So, but till now, he's still in the confused state. Even though he's very knowledgeable, he hasn't gotten to the point that he's going to use intelligence to solve the problem. Yes. So the Krishna knows everything. He's the all-knower. He's everything. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He knows what is the future, present, past of Arjuna.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
Mother.
Thank you.
Very nicely said. Anybody else would like to? We have Devati Devas. He wrote, Krishna was amused by what was to come. So in the same way, he knew what was going to take place.
Yeah.
Anybody else would like to comment?
I think Krishna became compassionate and he wanted Arjuna to decide, wanted to give him free will. He left everything on Arjuna after that, after explaining everything.
Right.
That's it.
Yes. All these are all true answers.
One more thing, he hasn't surrendered to Krishna yet. He still thinks Krishna as a friend. He hasn't considered Krishna is going to be his master and he has to be his disciple yet. So till he surrenders to Krishna, only Krishna knows everything. So
well, he does surrender to him in the 7th verse, because he says, "Now I am your disciple, and it's so he surrenders. He says, "Now I am your shishya, your disciple, and I'm prapananam. I've surrendered unto you." So he's gotten to the point of surrender. But when a person smiles, especially in a situation that has, somebody's in grief, it could be that is somewhat insensitive. But smile is always warming.
yeah.
Here it says Krishna was smiling because a friend had chosen to become a disciple. A lot of all, he's always in the superior position as the master of everyone. And yet the Lord agrees to be a friend, as son, or a lover for a devotee who wants him in such a role. So this thing, that's what Krishna was smiling because a friend had chosen to become a disciple.
He made the right choice.
That's what, yeah.
Even despite all the grief that he was going to, he made the choice that was actually going to help bring him out of that grief and bring him into a place of understanding, knowledge, and ultimate happiness. When a child, sometimes you see a child go through a situation where it's the worst thing in the world. You talk to them, they're breaking down. My friend doesn't like me anymore. They're crying. I don't want to wake up in the morning. I don't want to go to school. They go through all these things where they're just in so much anxiety.
So Devi Mataji, are you there?
But the parent, they look
Yes,
at
I'm
it
here.
and they say,
You want to say something?
can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. So the parent, they understand there's actually something way beyond that, you know? What you're going through is not actually the highest and the, you know, it's not the end of the world, you know? And they can actually look and they kind of, maybe to the child, they may not smile or laugh, but maybe they'll call somebody up and, oh, you got to see what happened to my child. Because they know in the end, it's not the end of the world. So even though Arjuna was going through this breakdown, because he turned to Krishna, he was going to come out of this. Well, Krishna, knowing that actually you're just identifying with your material body, and this is the cause of your distress. You're actually not going, this is not the end of your life. It's not the end of your world. You will come out of that. He had that confidence, that friendly affection, in which he smiled to Arjuna, which gave Arjuna that comfort that actually everything will be okay. Mother Sudevi, you were going to, you want to check?
Yes, yes, Prabhu. Yes, very nice class explanation. And then, yes, Krishna is smiling because Arjuna finally decided to surrender. That's one of the answers that devotees gave. And then it could be different, many reasons. He accept that Krishna. But I had a separate question, Prabhu. Are you still on the topic, or should I ask my question now?
Oh, please ask your question.
Okay, when you talking about Bhishma, before before his father Santanu got married to Satyavati and how he went to the father's house, you told the whole story, and then the Akashvani calling Bhishma, and then singing how exalted he was, like you explained very nicely, half parent from demigod and half such a royal family. But later on, when we read the Mahabharata and hear how he actually sided with Duryodhan, and then when Draupadi is disobeying and he would not stop, it's kind of astonishing. I just want to, if you can comment on it, please.
Vishnugadar Prabhu, he spoke about this last week, and this also goes to kind of just the perplexities of life, that not everything just falls in line the way it should. You know, there's a saying, no good deed goes unpunished. That even though despite you do the best you can do, sometimes due to your, the arrangements that have been kind of predestined to you through your karma, you have certain associations, and through those associations, you have certain obligations. In the case, Vishnugadar Prabhu was saying last week, in the case of Drona and Bhishma, they kind of were taken care of by Duryodhana. They were in the kind of the fat. They were kind of they were employed in one sense by them. So you have certain attachments or you have certain obligations that you have. And it's not like you don't like the other side. They were just as torn as Arjuna was torn. But they were at a place where they just couldn't, they had to be on that side. And therefore, Duryodhana, in the very beginning, he challenges Bhishma and Dronacharya, saying, I need you to fight with all your energy, because right now, I think you're only half-heartedly going to fight, because your real love lies with the Pandavas. Even though your physical bodies are here, your hearts are really with the Pandavas. So therefore, I don't think you can give it your best. So he's always trying to motivate them at the beginning of the first chapter. But the situations, despite us trying to do everything right, sometimes we wind up in situations that aren't always the most favorable. Would you like to do that?
I have a question. I mean, a comment or a question, please.
Sure.
You talked about miserliness. Is this miserliness related to our real being? We are more concentrated on spending our material things, are not, keeping up with the spiritual goal, or we are spending less on spiritual matters. Can you explain that to me again, please?
Sure. The Sanskrit word is kripanas. And Srila Prabhupada says, the kripanas are miserly persons, waste their time being overly affectionate to body, society, country, in the material conception of life. So it's searching after something that is not as valuable as what you could be searching after. So if you have to spend your time, and you spend your time on something that is less valuable than something that is more valuable, you're kind of wasting your time. And if you do that in ignorance, then you're just covered in ignorance. But if you have some knowledge about that, now Arjuna was a cultured person. Arjuna was well trained in shastras, in customs, religiosity. So he knew better, but he was being overcome by these lower feelings. So therefore, instead of taking the higher road of understanding, he kept getting attached to these miserly feelings or lower feelings, which were not going to award him a solution to his problem. And he recognized that, and therefore he calls it a miserly weakness. Like he knows that it's a weakness. Despite that he quoted Shastra, despite he was acting on the level of compassion, despite he was trying to prevent bloodshed, he understood that the feelings that he was having as a warrior were actually a weakness.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I understand that. Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Mother Sadevi, would you like to add anything to today's class before we conclude?
No, Prabhu, thank you very much. It was very nicely done, well explained. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed a couple of the classes, but it's so nice to go from the beginning and to start. And I'm looking forward to the tomorrow Bhagavad Gita reading.
Jai.
Thank you.
Thank you. You did a very good job. Thank you very much, Dronacharya.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for nice class. And I also missed in the beginning little bit.
Okay, it's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have,
Thank you.
all our classes are recorded on the YouTube channel.
Yes.
Anybody, you can tell people about our classes if they want to go to and listen throughout the week. Next week, we are going to begin Krishna begins talking next week. So we're up to the point where now the next verse starts with the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Now Krishna is going to be imparting knowledge to Arjuna. We've led up these last, I think it's been a month, maybe even more, up to this point. So now it culminates in Arjuna is now going to stop talking.
He's silent already.
So this also leads us into what Mother Sadevi had mentioned. I want to announce that starting tomorrow and continuing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m., we're going to have a Bhagavad Gita reading. We're going to start at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. It'll be for a half hour. The goal of this, the motivation behind this, is to give devotees an opportunity to become regular in their reading habits.
Prabhu, is it 5 or 5:30?
5 o'clock. So there was a little bit of confusion. There'll be another email that goes out tomorrow morning that'll explain.
Okay.
5 o'clock, so 5 to 5:30.
Thank you.
But most of us have the books at home.
Yeah.
Some of us what we find in talking to devotees. Sometimes they struggle with staying regular and reading the books. Life happens, maybe they don't read as much as they want to. So having a consistent time every week, half hour, we're not trying to extend it to an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, manageable for devotees, devotees that are working, devotees that have various responsibilities. If they can just set apart some part of their day, as His Grace Vaishnav Guru says, you can become a sage page by page. So if we just take bite-sized opportunities to hear, this is for both the seeker, for the devotee, the novice, as well as the experienced devotee, to take advantage of just coming together and reading. This isn't going to be a class. It's just simply just reading the verses and purports of Srila Prabhupada. There will be an assigned devotee at each class to be able to answer any questions that may come up or stress certain points that need to be mentioned. But the goal of this is to just absorb the verses that the Bhagavad Gita, as well as the Bhaktivedanta purports by Srila Prabhupada. With that, I also want to say, this is the last week of the Live to Give Bhagavad Gita book distribution campaign. This is extended for 3 weeks, starting at the Purushottama Mas and ending at this Friday. Philadelphia, we have through either sponsored or donated, I think close to 190 cases of Bhagavad Gitas. Our original goal was 108. And this is a testament to the enthusiasm of the devotees wanting to give this sacred science that we've all benefited from, that we're all learning about, to not just keep it in ourselves, not to be miserly about it, but to give it to others. We want to reach our goal. So if we can, we got about another, I think, 25 to 30 more to go to get there. Dana Tarpatsa Prabhu will have the numbers and so we'll put it out in the newsletter, in an email a little bit later. But if anybody wants to purchase a box of Bhagavad Gitas, you can do so on our newsletter link. You can do it, or at the temple at the front desk, we have a sign-up form. It's $108 per case. But if you do want to participate, this is the week to do it. We have 7 days, less than 7 days left. We've got 5 days left. That is help us reach our goal. What we've done so far surpassed anything we've done in the past. Again, it's really a sign that as we come out of this coronavirus, coming out of this COVID, we're going to have a renewed energy for going out and giving and distributing Srila Prabhupada's books to the public. Lastly, I want to say that on Wednesday evening, we're going to have the first of our town hall meetings for 2021. Sometimes these are called Istagostis. We have been labeled a Can We Talk, because we want to give an opportunity for devotees in the community to come together to talk. Now, each of these has a specific topic, because sometimes this comes together and people just have a laundry list of all their complaints of, what they want to talk about. So this isn't that forum. This forum is an opportunity for devotees to discuss something specific. The specific thing we're going to talk about is a vision for the use of the ISKCON of Philadelphia, the campus. We have a beautiful temple that we've been in now for two years. We have a large property, 2 buildings that connect to the temple building. We have a basement of the temple building. We have a lot of beautiful property, but a lot of beautiful land. And as we move into the new year, as we start to come out of COVID, we want to start building, renovating, and designing things to make it a more wonderful place for devotees to cultivate their devotion, as well as being able to use it for preaching, where people from the outside can come and feel very comfortable at the Hare Krishna temple. So as you go through this planning process, we want to hear and engage the devotees within the community as we progress. So that is coming up at 6:30 on Wednesday, this same Zoom channel. We'd like to say thank you to the sponsors tonight, Krishna and Shushma Shaini. She passed a significant milestone in her life, in her career. She got a very wonderful certification, and she was very thankful and wanted to give thanks to Lord Krishna for helping him, from him helping her. And she wanted to ask for the blessings of the devotees. Now, this wonderful family, I think this is the third month in a row that they've sponsored a Sunday feast. They're very wonderful donors to the temple, and we want to offer our blessings to them. So please join me in chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on their behalf. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
Hare Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama, Rama
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
All the blessings of Sri Sri Krishna.
Jai. I would like to thank all the devotees for coming out tonight.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you very much. You did a good job.
Please
Thank you.
join us every morning at 6:30 for japa, if you want to chant with other devotees. We need support there. We need devotees to come and help strengthen that program. And we have a very wonderful Srimad Bhagavatam Sangha that begins at 7:50 every morning on the same Zoom channel. So if you want to hear in the morning Bhagavatam class, it'll be very purifying for your lives. Please tune in throughout the week every morning at 7:50. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki,
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Haribo.
Thank you again.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.